Mr. President.
Senator from Indiana.
Mr. President, could I inquire with the allocation of time here? The senator from Vermont has generously yielded me the opportunity to just speak for a few moments. I just want to make sure I don't get the situation mixed up here so that we've run out of time. What's the allocation?
Senator from Florida, Senator Rubio, has 17 minutes. Senator from South Dakota, Senator Thune, has 9 minutes.
All right. I would ask unanimous consent, Mr. President, that I just take 6 minutes of Senator Rubio's time.
Without objection.
Of course, would not object, but I'd also ask consent that upon completion of that, I be allowed 7 minutes as though in morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'd just like to respond to some of the statements that have been made here relative to the continuing resolution, which hopefully we'll be voting on today, if not today, tomorrow. There's no question on either side of the aisle here as to the need for emergency supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2011 disaster relief. There's agreement on both sides of the aisle that FEMA is short of money to meet immediate needs in this fiscal year, 2011, which expires at the end at midnight on September 30th. And so the disaster relief fund is very low. And on September 9th, the President requested $500 million in emergency appropriations to finish out the immediate needs between now and the end of this fiscal year, which is just a little more than a week away. And that has been provided and taken care of. As we know, the House is working on sending the Senate a continuing resolution that includes this emergency funding and more than the President's $500 million request. The House CR is expected to include $774 million for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, plus an additional $226 million for the Army Corps of Engineers for emergency flood control. This emergency funding is not covered by the Budget Control Act, and so the House, in accordance with procedures that we've been going forward this year and trying to be as careful with taxpayers' money as we can, the House offered an offset for that. That was defeated yesterday in the House. I think they're working on a bill now to hopefully bring it over to us with some minor revisions. Now, while this funding covers FEMA's immediate needs, as requested by the President, through the rest of the fiscal year, the House bill also includes additional funding at the current level of $2.65 billion in fiscal year 2012 for FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund, which will provide the necessary funding to deal with the requests and make sure that people get the support that they need from losses in the various disasters through this continuing resolution period, which will go to about November 18th. It's important to note that despite some of the things that have been said, Republicans support disaster funding. It's critical to respond to the many disasters that have affected so many states over the past few months. We support that effort. However, the additional funding for fiscal year 2012 sought by Senator Reid and Senate Democrats is not needed immediately. In fact, the President has not requested immediate passage of any of this additional funding beyond what is needed to provide FEMA what it needs to address the situations and to make the necessary payments between now and the expiration of this current resolution, which we'll be voting on here today or tomorrow. Now, this is not to say that we should not consider additional disaster relief. We will. There are many challenges out for states that states face in response to the disasters that have struck across the country. My own home state of Indiana has experienced floods that merited a disaster declaration from the President earlier this year. We are in no sense in the same plight as many states that have had disasters far and above what we have faced in my own state. But it's important to note that as a nation, we need to step forward and address these immediate needs. But we have a process in place to do this. The Budget Control Act that Congress passed in August does allow a process for providing disaster relief in fiscal year 2012 through a disaster cap adjustment. As a result from that, the Senate Appropriations Committee, in which I'm the ranking member on Homeland Security Subcommittee, which oversees FEMA, that committee has been considering the fiscal year 2012 bill and has included disaster assistance where appropriate, pursuant to the disaster cap adjustment in the Budget Control Act. The key words here are where appropriate. There may be looming disasters in front of us. We hope not, but we're still in hurricane season. And we need to be in a position to be able to provide additional funding should those disasters occur. But there is no need to go forward with what Senator Reid has proposed, and that is dumping a lot of money that has not yet been certified as needed into an expenditure, particularly at a time when every dollar of expenditure needs to be carefully weighed in terms of our current fiscal situation. Some have noted that while the CR may adequately fund FEMA, it does not address the other agencies that need disaster funding. If that's the case, then why has not the President requested these additional funds immediately? On September 9th, I quote the President, he sent Congress his request for additional FEMA disaster funding, including the 500, I ask unanimous consent for just one more minute. Thank you. If this is the case, why did he not ask for this? We don't need to include this additional funding to meet the needs of the people for the disasters that have already occurred. This funding necessary to do that is included in the House bill, which we'll be voting on. Republicans want to ensure that the communities devastated by disasters receive the resources that will help them rebuild. We recognize that American citizens have had their lives turned upside down by Mother Nature, and the CR will provide adequate disaster relief through November in accordance with the President's request and FEMA's stated needs. As a result, there's no need to add all of this additional assistance immediately as part of the CR, and I urge members to support passage of the CR that the House will be sending us shortly.
Senator from Vermont.